Serves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think before I begin, I'd just like to ask any of my Republican colleagues whether anybody found the secret 3-page memo detailing all the concessions that were made to the most extreme elements of the Republican conference. Anyone? I heard that Speaker McCarthy told members during a closed conference meeting that there is no official document or 3-page addendum to the House Rules package detailing these concessions. But none of us ever said it was official. If it was official, it would have been in the official rules package. But I also took note of the fact that in Axios today, we saw this. It says, one thing the document doesn't contain, according to NRCC Chair Richard Hudson, who said that he's seen it, is promised committee chairmanships for specific members, quote, no names, just representation on panels, end quote. So we were able to find out from Mr. Hudson what's not in the in that secret memo, but it would be helpful maybe before the end of the day if we could actually get the document so that the American people know what was promised. In any event, Mr. Speaker, China has the second largest economy in the world, and there is no doubt that their government seeks to extend their sphere of influence and export their model of authoritarianism abroad. The question is, how should the United States respond? For the past 4 years, I've served as chair and co-chair of the Congressional Executive Commission on China. We have monitored China's compliance with international human rights and rule of law standards. Under my leadership, alongside Senators Jeff Merkley and Marco Rubio and Congressman Chris Smith, the Commission has continued to draw attention to the Chinese government's human rights violations and technology-enhanced authoritarianism. We passed my bill, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which seeks to address the genocide in Xinjiang, and we hope can serve as a model for future human rights legislation. We passed the Tibet Policy and Support Act to support the people of Tibet in their struggle against Chinese repression, and the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act to require the U.S. government to impose sanctions against mainland China and Hong Kong officials considered responsible for human rights abuses in Hong Kong. Now, everything that we accomplished at the CECC has been because that commission operates in a bipartisan manner with nonpartisan staff. Our comprehensive annual reports are widely respected by government officials, academics, and advocacy community, and the advocacy community because they are well researched and they are fact-based. And that brings us to today. Mr. Speaker, we are here to consider the creation of a select committee. This select committee on China would investigate and submit policy recommendations on the status of China's economic, technological, and security progress, as well as its ongoing competition with the United States. I'll be honest, I have reservations here. Many of us have concerns about this turning into a committee that focuses on pushing Republican conspiracy theories and partisan talking points. We certainly don't want it to turn into a place that perpetuates anti-Asian hate. We cannot and we will not tolerate that. But instead, I would hope that this new committee would work in a similar fashion as the CECC, producing bipartisan work with a fact-based tone and approach that could be received by the international community seriously and substantively. And there are a few things I think the Select Committee needs to keep in mind if they truly want to be effective. First, President Trump repeatedly mislabeled COVID with racist language. Such rhetoric coincided with spikes in hate-based acts of violence and discrimination against people of Chinese or Asian origin across our country. This language has no place on this committee or anywhere in Congress. Second, this committee should not seek to focus solely on military solutions. Yes, China's military modernization is a legitimate issue, but that does not demand a military-first policy response. Third, I'm concerned that a committee focus myopically on the economic, technological, and security challenges of China could distract us from the need to build a holistic approach in many of these policy areas. We need to remember that the United States faces economic, technological, and security challenges from many different regions across the globe, not just China. And to focus solely on China, whether it be policy related to trade, tech, authoritarianism, or anything else, is neither analytically sound nor effective. Fourth and finally, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Gallagher, said that if he were to chair this committee, he would focus on, I quote, ideological competition and human rights, end quote. And I would just like to say that human rights are not ideological. Human rights are fundamental and universal, protected by a vast body of international law, codified at the United Nations and widely adjudicated. They apply to every person in every country and territory on earth. It is the Chinese Communist Party, in fact, that portrays human rights along an ideological divide. That falsely portrays Chinese values as something distinct from Western values in an effort to justify its repression of the people of China. It's important that the committee does not adopt the rhetoric of Chinese officials. So while I do have concerns here, after reading the resolution itself, I will be voting yes. The Democratic Party has led the way in implementing efforts to monitor China's compliance with international human rights and rule of law standards, and we will continue to do so here. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.